Regina, Mark, yay, look at everybody. Carol, I get to see you live finally. Yay, Kim Wagner, so good. Yay, everybody, all y'all, it's great to see you. Welcome. I love this. Let's see, we got New York, Nebraska, Georgia. We got another New York. Carol, you're DC or Virginia?
Maryland.
Okay, neither of the above.
Close enough.
Okay,
Close enough.
Internationally here with Mark in Toronto. Marilyn Gibbs, another New Yorker. Hey, Marilyn, good to see you. Thanks for being here. Absolutely. Kim, I think you're in New York, if I remember correctly. Leslie.
Yes,
all right, excellent. Good to see you. Leslie's coming at us from Nebraska also. Leslie, good to see you here.
Hi.
Hey, you and Scott are both in Nebraska. So, well,
Yes.
I'm assuming, Scott, are you in Nebraska today?
Yes.
Okay, excellent.
Yes, I am.
Very good. Excellent. And Oregon, of course, our fabulous guest, CJ, is in Oregon. So, so good, so good, so good. Well, thanks for making time, everybody. And we've got 24/7. How we parse it is always an interesting experiment as human beings. And today you've chosen to join us. I'm so appreciative. Some of you have been to the former show, Connecting Juice. Super grateful for that. The pandemic gave us an opportunity and gave us so many gifts, in my opinion. And one of those gifts for me was to examine or re-examine, where am I investing my life? I bet that you had that thought that ran through your head more than once. And part of that was the Connecting Juice show that I had started in April of 2020. And I thought, I love the show and I need to tweak it a little bit. So tweak it we did. We went quiet for a while and we are back and it's at the table. So I hope you brought something to sip on. If you did, raise your mug or your glass. If you didn't, raise your hand and say hi. There you look at that. That's so good. Yes, absolutely. Love it. Tell me in the chat what you're sipping on, if you would, please. Love it. CJ, what are you sipping on?
I've got a coffee with extra cream and a raw sugar.
Nice. Well, Marilyn's sharing the coffee Jones with you. I'm guessing there's a few other coffeeers in the room. I've got a tea. All right, Kim, right on. I've got some hot water with lime leaves and fresh ginger. Yes. Very bad for you, Diet Pepsi. Isn't it though? Yeah, Carol, you're funny. Very bad for you, Diet Pepsi. Okay, well, we could riff on that all day long. As long as you're really connected to it, Kim, go for it. You can call me Carol Regina. You're funny. Neil's coming in too. So when we think about being at the table, like here's a table right here. I happen to be in Casper, Wyoming at my beloved in-laws, and that's the table we sit at a lot. The idea of coming to the table and being very human, being respectful, being thoughtful, opening our mind in completely different ways that we sometimes don't if we're standing elbow to elbow or sitting side by side or face to face, whatever that is. The whole point of the At the Table show is that we're going to have interesting conversations with great people doing interesting work. And yes, like I said, my insurance is sexy, because it provides us a peace of mind. So I could think of the first person who jumps into my mind for insurance. She's not even my agent. I love her dearly. CJ Shipley. What do you call yourself, CJ? Tell us the title you give yourself.
Well, insurance broker, it immediately puts people off. And I thought, what is a phrase that really is indicative of me? So I'm an unconventional insurance advisor.
I love that. So that's the first little nugget today. How we describe ourselves is a big connecting point. CJ, when you use that title or that phrase in meeting people, because I know you meet a lot of people, you're very intentional about it. How does that land, or what do you see? How do you feel when you share with people like, I'm an unconventional insurance advisor versus I sell insurance?
It's almost falling on my sword. And by the way, I'm losing my voice, but I know I'm good for 40 minutes. For me, it's almost falling on the sword of people aren't ever excited to talk about insurance. Like I've never in my 23 years ever met anybody excited to talk about it. In fact, most people say, oh, it's a necessary evil. And then when I file a claim, it's a nightmare. So I just kind of fall on my sword and say, I'm a policyholder. It makes me crazy. And for myself, I've had to be unconventional. And in 23 years, I've learned how to be unconventional regardless of where you're at.
Yeah. And so what does unconventional mean to you, CJ? Let's just talk about unconventional first. So a couple things about CJ before she answers that. CJ is a very vibrant person. Like all of you, she has some terrific positive energy. She brings that in every way. She's a true connector. She's not focused on networking. That's a thing. The connecting is the mojo. It's the verb. It's the action. So when you describe yourself, or how do you define unconventional, CJ? Let's start there.
Such a great question. For me, it's almost reverse engineering the whole concept of insurance. People always want great coverage at the best price possible, but people are not as great at finding out, well, what does it take to get to that place? A lot of times insurance is really viewed as a commodity, which it can be depending on what it is you're covering. What makes it unconventional and what my customers really love is that we look at, okay, here's how low your premium could be. And then we reverse engineer and say, okay, in order to get to this place, these are the best practices that either need to be refined, need to be adopted, or this is an area that's a blind spot of yours and it's having a profound impact on how much premium you're paying. So it gets outside of that. Here's your coverage, here's your pricing. And it's interesting when I look at Ginger's amazing writing, the thing that really aligns well with this is the ignition of alignment, right? When you look at that step where you kind of bring everybody into the same page and the shared vision, it really opens up the opportunity to have meaningful dialogue, all things on the table, unpacking the suitcase. So that to me is unconventional in a world, providing a product that people just don't generally love.
Right. And yet we feel that it's necessary. Is insurance always necessary, CJ?
I believe that at every level, whether you choose to buy insurance or not, you're insured. If you don't have insurance, whether it's workers' comp or personal, you're self-insuring. So at some point, if there's a situation, a claim, a loss, if you don't have insurance, you're still going to insure it because you're going to pay for it out of pocket. So it really is, in every direction you look at it, it's necessary and it's there, whether you like it or not.
No kidding. CJ, would you, while I get the next question out, would you please in the chat, would you please put your contact information? These are never going to be sales pitches. These are going to be offering up somebody great. CJ is happy to connect with anybody. She's going to share her particular zone of genius. If you didn't look this up already, she's going to share that in particular. So if there is somebody you think that she can serve, if you feel like she's your person, great. Here's the great thing about all of this connecting world is there's never pressure. It's not a should or have to, which is in the canon, as some of you know. It's always a get to, want to. If it's a right fit, then go ahead and put those pieces together. So, and if anybody here is interested in connecting with anybody here while we're live, feel free to reach out to them. And if you're the one that's being reached to, if you say, no, thank you, that's great. This is all just a respectful format for conversation. So CJ, I want to know, first of all, give us the 2 or 3 sentence response to, well, what kind of insurance? I guess, is that the best way to just say, ask that question, or is there a better way to ask it? And then please tell people what's your particular, I wish it was personal. You'd be my agent. But what is your zone of insurance genius?
That's a great question because there are so many different lines of insurance. So I'm licensed in personal insurance, like what Ginger just referenced. There's commercial insurance, auto, liability, life insurance. I have been intentional in selecting workers' comp to be where I live my world for a lot of reasons. In summary, instead of going on about insurance, it's really a human insurance about how you hire, how you train, how safe you are. Yeah. So workers' comp is the world that I live in.
Okay. And why did you choose that? Because that's ultra sexy. And I'm guessing that it's often misunderstood too. I just asked you 2 more questions, but why did you choose workers' comp? And yeah, just run with that.
Initially, and this still applies today, but the reason I stay kind of expand is beyond that. Initially and today, It's so frustrating because I have insurance policies feeling like you're subject to rate change from factors that aren't even from you. So if an insurance company, they're not making as much interest on their investment income, so taking your premiums, putting it in the stock market, their portfolio is not doing well, guess what? Your rates are going to go up. If you're in an industry where it's like, let's say, electrical contractors, they've had a lot of claims, but you haven't, your rates are going to go up. When I look at workers' comp, it's truly the most variable expense of all lines of insurance based off of those best practices. How do you find your employees? Are you going to return them to light duty if they get injured on the job? So for me, just to have that ability to help an employer control their costs instead of just, you know, having no rate stabilization and going with the flow of insurance carriers, and it's just not fun.
No, no, it feels like it's one of those relationships, CJ. And if you're here live too, feel free to chime in the chat, of course, that it's if insurance is necessary, then the relationship is necessary. And often when we think about it, if we think about the lowest price first, then we are actually narrowing our options. We're just looking at it, like you said, as a commodity. We're not looking at it like a relationship. And you are so fundamentally relationship focused. You tell me over and over again, and in our friendship, in our conversations, like, gee, I like, there's this certain percentage of my business that are smaller fish, so to speak, and it's smaller fish with full respect. And you love serving them. They're not going to be the highest ticket. They may not stick around long, whatever that is, and you still serve them. So when you're thinking about your strategy in building your life, because I know you well, your business is part of your life, just like your fabulous kids and all the adventures you take, and Black Beauty, ask her about Black Beauty some other time. I'm going to give you a question from my game. What's your strategy to connect with other people?
In fact, I got this from Canon, and I've lived this, but to see it in copy, it's like, be curious, be interested, not interesting. And so really like leading with a place of curiosity, but genuine, not like, okay, before I go, these are the questions I want to ask. Things like meeting with, a business owner that we don't represent, even some of my clients, like just like speaking from the heart, for example, you've done this a long time. What brought you into this? Like, what made you want to do this? And then ask them, why do you stay? Because those are really meaningful questions. And asking those questions, talking less. I read the other day this quote that said, just because you have the ability to speak doesn't mean that you're intelligent. And so asking those questions, right? I think that when we meet new people, we could have a tendency to talk more than we listen. And the thing is that I think people naturally, we think more about ourselves than anybody else, because that's the way that we're made. If you can just for a moment shift that and say, okay, it's important to me that I look good and I do good and they see my heart, but really for it to take full circle, full effect, so really be curious, because people want to connect, and it doesn't come with you sharing all of the great things about yourself. It's really in that listening.
Yeah. And so then do you find that it's true, CJ, that when you listen more, use these instead of this, you are able to add not just to the conversation, but to that person's life and their ecosystem. And if you're like, oh, if I'm not the one, oh, well, maybe Carol is, maybe Amy is, maybe like I'm going to send her to Scott because that person will help you. Like, do you find that listening, this sounds like fish in a barrel. I think you just said, we feel like it's natural. Do you find that when you ask those questions, when you're interested, instead of being interesting, you go down completely different avenues? You learn all kinds of different information you wouldn't have otherwise.
Absolutely. And really, when you look at insurance, because again, people don't love it, really building that connection and that relationship creates this level of peace in partnership. And so really asking those questions and listening, everything else, if you're successful at that and you're authentic and intentional about it, even if it's a situation where it's not a line of insurance that that I spend my time in, if I really lead with my heart to serve, which I believe virtually everybody has that heart, then a solution will be provided. And the next step in a relationship is effortless, doesn't require the sell. If I deliver X, will you give me Y? That's a road I don't ever want to go down. So yeah,
Right.
I mean, it's so fruitful.
Yeah. Connecting isn't algebraic, is it?
Yeah. It's not
Yeah.
Legos. It's not
Right?
Legos.
No, not at all. Amy, you're smiling. I know you know what I'm talking about. Catherine, I see you nodding your head. Like, I think everybody here understands that there's a big difference. And it's really quite simple to change that habit. We have to be aware, we have to acknowledge, and then we have to be willing. CJ, what's a question you would like to answer as an insurance agent? And for everybody who's here live, and even if you're watching the recording after the fact, put it in the comments. What question would you have of a professional insurance person? Ask any question that's on your mind. Keep it constructive. There's probably a kernel under there if it's like on fire. Go ahead and ask any questions. And if you put a question in the chat or in the comments, please put some question marks before it, because we can tag that easier, and CJ's happy to answer them. So CJ, what question would you like to answer as an insurance agent? Said another way, what's a question that you don't think people ask enough that would be a really helpful question?
Boy, that's a great question. We need to do a drinking game. Every time we say question, everybody drink your coffee.
So what is that question you would like to answer as a professional and unconventional insurance advisor?
That would be, in the world that I live in, what can I do to know that I'm doing everything I can to protect my employees? I don't see insurance as a big item on my balance sheet. And then from there, I don't have to deal with it that much. I mean, that's kind of a loaded 3-pronged question. That shows interest, that they really want to do the right thing and keep their employees safe. They don't want to pay a lot for their insurance. And they kind of want to scoot out and then have us step in when we're like, whoa, danger zone, you're on the ledge. You don't know it. You don't know it. That light in the tunnel is actually a train.
Scoot out and step in. I love that. So I know that we have a bunch of sole proprietors, a bunch of people who have their own businesses here, CJ. So we don't necessarily have teams of employees and so forth. What's a question that zone, like me, I know several other people in here are in that. What's a question that somebody who runs their business and is a single entity operator, what's a question? Is that the same question we should ask? I feel like, what's the version of that for somebody who is a sole owner?
A great version for that. And I think when you're a sole owner, I mean, sometimes it's kind of a blank sheet of paper. So a question you should ask is, definitely ask people that you respect, who do you work with for your insurance needs? And then I would go to that broker, and assuming that that's a good fit, ask and say, I don't want to buy every line of insurance. My level of what I need to sleep at night is going to be different than everybody. I need you to tell me what are areas in which, if I didn't have insured, would keep me like really awake at night.
Yeah. Oh, so good. But you just nailed something, because I think everybody in the room knows insurance agents if you're not one yourself. And I'm always astounded, CJ, when people introduce themselves and they do. Insurance is their profession. I'll say that. I won't say they just sell insurance. Insurance is your profession, your chosen career. They say, oh, well, I sell insurance. And I always think, oh, there's such a better way to describe that. And you just nailed one of the ways I want to help people rethink, like tell people you help them sleep better at night, because we could all use better sleep, right?
Yeah.
When we know we're covered, so to speak, which is an interesting term from the insurance world, when we know we're covered, we do sleep better at night. So
for sure.
I love that you just said that.
And the level's different for everybody, right?
Exactly. Yes. So you answered I'm writing voluminous notes. So if I look down, y'all, I still love seeing your faces and your names here. Melissa, it's good to see you. Neil, it's great to see you here too. What's the question you would like to be asked?
Well, it's a lot like what I said before, like, what do I need to do? Tell me where I have a blind spot. Help it not cost me a ton of money. Help me protect my employees. I think that would be the biggest thing. How can insurance not be a topic on my plate on a regular basis? And that really applies for any line of insurance, right? I mean, this is the world that we live in. And I think we all in our professions sometimes fail to recognize that this thing that I'm talking to this business owner about is such a small part of their day. And it's part of the white noise that comes at them all day while we're, narrowly focused on the area in which we have the equivalent of a doctorate. Yeah. So I think it's like, how can I make this not such an issue for me?
Yeah. So simplicity, perhaps some ease, some peace of mind. I know that CJ and I met when I was living in Southern Oregon. We have moved to Missoula, Montana now. And of course, I think most people in the room know that there are a lot of wildfires on the West Coast. And I mean, there's wildfires everywhere. And I remember my insurance agent, John Snowden, you probably know him, he's State Farm. And he is like you, CJ, he's truly community, customer relation, partnership focused. Because I remember Larry, my fine husband, who I adore, got a text from John and said, just making sure you're okay. If you need anything, call me. Otherwise, please don't. Please don't. Like, he's up to his eyeballs. And so when you're thinking about that kind of activity as an insurance agent, as somebody who's really going to bat for your partners, CJ, what are some of the skills that you have developed? Because I know you're really big into growth, like I think everybody, frankly, here, as I look around this room, and that's the truth. You're focused on your growth. You really want to serve. What kind of skills have you focused? Give us, say, 3 skills that you focused on developing for yourself to better connect that would transfer across any industry, any situation.
Oh, I love this question. This has really evolved, and hopefully it continues to evolve in me. And I hope I articulate this the best way, but really it's being unapologetic of who I am, but leaving a lot of space for course correction. And I hope that I articulated that correctly. Yeah, I think like when we come from a place of being grounded, we don't feel that we have to explain or apologize all the time, but also have that listening ear and leave room for course correction. I mean, I just think that is like the perfect algebraic formula that's been really the backbone of it all. And it's so that course correction, I mean, there's this piece where you have the swagger of a college kid, right? But then that course correction is like, what? Right? But that humility. And if you look at, I believe everybody on this Zoom, if they looked at people who've loved them enough in their career path or personal path to really be honest with them, like, hey, I've noticed this when you say this particular thing, it could be perceived this way. That's that space for course correction. And you really, I don't think that you get that being unapologetic about yourself without really looking within yourself. So that's good. That's the driving force.
That's a big one. Okay, so that's the first one, being unapologetic with space for course correction, not explaining, not apologizing. What's another skill that you have intentionally worked on to grow yourself? And we use growth instead of change around here. It's the same thing, but growth sits better.
I don't know if you guys have heard of this. The Navajo Indians, it comes back to like being graceful with yourself and with other people.
Okay.
So the Navajo Indians, and it's kind of expanded to the Japan culture, all of that. When they create tapestry, they intentionally will put a flaw in that design. And sometimes it's very visual to the eye. Sometimes you really have to look for it. And this was just, it really was profound in my thinking of life and connection and friendships and business relationships, that flaw is there and it's intentional. And when I did research on it, they call it the spirit line. And it's kind of connecting with yourself that, I'm not going to be perfect. I'm going to try everything. Nothing's going to be perfect. And it sounds so cliche, right? Everybody says, oh, nothing's perfect. But really like kind of like bringing that into your line of sight.
Making it intentionally imperfect. So you just, that's really on the table right up front.
Yeah. Really, and whether it's like,
that relieves some pressure then, doesn't it?
Oh yeah. And it
Oh, I
also
like
helps
that.
you provide grace for other people when maybe they did you wrong, or they said something that really it kind of hurt you. It's kind of like compartmentalizing your emotions and really applying that to them. Like, okay, that's their spirit line. And more often than not, my spirit line appears where I'm like, oh, probably should have worded that a little differently. They will put in like an intentional piece of fabric that clashes, or like one bead that is not colored like the rest of the beads. And I think that that's a big part of it. It's not,
I like it.
yeah.
So
just that deliberate flaw.
yeah, and I like how that absolutely supports what you first shared, being unapologetic while being upfront. So you don't have to say I'm sorry. It's like, okay, here's life, here's me as I know it. I'm always trying to grow and improve, and I'm gonna put this right out here.
Yeah.
The third one I'd love you to share. I know I asked you to pick one, but I want to pick one third one that you've taught me that has been unbelievably helpful. That 4-step conversation tool. And Larry, if you'd put this in the chat, please, when CJ shares the 4 steps. This, y'all, is something that CJ has developed and come to. And I first started watching her do this, and then it connected when we would have conversations. And then I've used it in some very difficult conversations. You can use it in every conversation, but it's really useful in difficult conversations. So CJ, please tell us that 4-step Shipley conversation guide. There, we just dubbed it.
This was such a gift, and I have yet to find where this came from in terms of like textbook, and maybe it didn't. So I was in Texas with a group of girlfriends, and I met a new friend who I hadn't met before at this girls trip. She is a fire chief in Texas. And I thought, okay, Texas, female fire chief, like that could be great. It could not be great, and so with that curiosity, I was like, well, tell me about that. Like, do you love it? Do you feel like you have to put on your armor, or do you feel like you've got that nailed in? And she said, I learned something that I forever use, and I've adopted it. So when you think about approaching a difficult conversation, or there's something that you want to gain, not for personal gain, but there's something really important that you want to get out of it, or just your emotions, if you want to figure out, why am I so upset about this, but it doesn't turn into conversation, right? The 4 pieces that really are going to be pivotal to that would be, it's called FIRR: fact, impact, respect, request. So what that would look like is, let me think of a good example.
Tell me, let's use this example. Say I really torque you off. We're having a conversation and I say something and I completely bungle it, or you're like, wow, where is that coming from? That feels disrespectful, but you know something, there must be something going on. So can we use that as a scenario?
Perfect.
Okay. Because that never happens. So we'll pretend.
It hasn't happened. You and I are like very like-minded. I probably won't ever happen.
And I trust you that the day it does happen, you're going to call me on this, Shipley. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah.
Fact,
and you'll
impact,
be like, you're doing the
request.
FIRR. You're doing the FIRR on me, aren't you, CJ?
Okay. All right.
So
go for it.
If Ginger said something that it just didn't sit well with me, and I needed to kind of sit on it for a while and unpack what was going on in my head and heart, and I concluded, like, I think that this could have been done better. So the fact would be, so if I went to Ginger, the fact would be, hey, Ginger, when we had coffee at your house last week, you had said to me that, I don't know what the example is.
Your kids are stupid. Let's just use something that's that blunt. Yeah. And her kids are brilliant, of course.
Thank you. You said to me, we'll use kids, for example. You said to me that I give my kids so much more leash than what a parent really should. So there's the fact, like you said this. The impact to me, it would be something like, and when you said that, I immediately got defensive, and it made me question my parenting. I mean, it had a profound impact on me. Respect, then that's where you give that person an out. You try to really put yourself in their shoes. Now, I understand, we are kind of a free range parenting household, and I get it. It's not for everybody. And this is the request. what I need from you is I need you to, really, when you're going to make a statement like that, be more mindful. And these are the words that would be more applicable to that. So that may not be the perfect example, but it works with virtually anything. I use it with my children, even with my employer. I felt like my supervisor, he was handling something really poorly, really, really poorly. And all my colleagues were complaining about it. And I thought, okay, I love him enough to be honest. And so in this situation, I was like, when you host meetings and you ask people to bring these things to the table, I don't know if you've noticed the impact of that is people kind of close off. And I know that you want to gain information, but I think everybody feels that wall come up. I know that these are measurable things to you, and they're super important to, you and the leadership team. What I think would be more beneficial is if you took this question and phrased it like this, I think you'd see those walls come down. And sometimes just like for yourself, if there's something upsetting you, sometimes it helps you realize, okay, well, maybe what it is I'm trying to navigate is more my issue than this person's issue.
Sure. Yeah, I encourage everybody who's listening, whenever you're listening, tuning in live or after the fact, try this. This is incredibly impactful. CJ had taught it to me a few years back. And then on a very personal level, there were some real communication challenges with a few members of my family, with me personally. And I was sharing it with CJ one time when we were together, and she said, Ginger, remember, and she helped me run through it. So that's the sidebar here, is that's what connection is about. Connection is about trust, it's transparency, it's vulnerability, it's willingness to say, hey, this is where I'm at. And then she shared that with me. And while I might not have used it exactly, it helped me grow my skills. And it helped me work through some of what I was going through. So that fact, impact, respect, request. So good. CJ, if you do, I credit it to you. You say you learned it from something else. If you do come up with where you got it, just send it to me and I'll add it to the show notes after the fact. But
you bet.
Again, while you're here, everybody, so glad you are here watching the At the Table. We are at the table. We are toasting you and connection. So good. And so
Melissa, she asked, how do you keep that framework top of mind in the moment? And I love practice, practice, practice. Yeah, that's a big part. And sometimes it's totally okay to take some space from a situation. I think being on top of your game, if you have all of the practice, even like right in that moment, and I've done it so many times, I'm not sure I would have the compartmentalization of how emotionally charged I am on the issue to really appropriately handle that and have an outcome that isn't just like, you upset me and here's why. So practice is a big part of it.
Do you ever write these out then, CJ, too? You write out what you want to share and communicate? Okay, so that's a good part of the practice too. Melissa, I know you come, like, you're a writer and you understand that. So that's a good one. Thank you. Catherine had another question. What are the most common blind spots? Catherine, is that for insurance? Is that for common blind spots? Give us a little bit more.
I had asked the question in regard to the insurance, but now that we're talking about this, I think it could apply to both, right?
Absolutely. Okay, great. Thank you, Catherine.
CJ, we'll get the business side out of the way because that's the most boring.
Oh, it's not boring. No. Hey, now, okay, stop. Sidebar.
All right.
Never give somebody permission to think what you do is boring. I mean, we got poets, we got farmers in here. We have, everybody's a game changer. So, all right, let's talk about the insurance first, because that's the most sexy.
Oh, right. Yes. It's so sexy. The blind spot in that would be assuming that your broker really understands your business. And the reality is most brokers, they have so many policies coming across their desk and their team has the same. So really making sure that they understand, like, what is the business that this person has? And oftentimes, especially when you're looking at smaller businesses or personal insurance, it requires you taking the initiative and making that call. Now, if you're a larger employer and you've got like a broker that specializes, that looks different because that dialogue happens throughout the year. That would be the biggest blind spot.
Okay.
Blind spot for, conversations that would really benefit from FIRR. I call it FIRR. In fact, my partner says, "Are you furring me?" And I'm like, "Absolutely."
Oh, I beg your pardon.
Absolutely.
It's family friendly, everybody.
Yes, he's so great. A blind spot with that. I mean, sometimes I think that, again, articulating this, I'm not sure if it will be translated the best. Sometimes emotion for me, and I've witnessed it too, can kind of irregulate your reason. So I think really it's okay to take a step back instead of, just reacting in that instant. I'm sure everybody on this call has had those experiences where you're just like, that was not okay, and da, 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 and I'm upset. And sometimes what you're saying isn't really matching what it is that's really going on. So taking some time and coming back to that conversation.
So good. So good.
Yeah.
Thank you for the questions, everybody.
Yeah.
So we're rounding the bend here. The wrap up question, as we have another sip from our mug, is this, CJ.
So it's going to be good. I can tell.
Is it going to be good? Who would you like to have at your table, to have a conversation with, to connect with, whether it's somebody you know personally already or somebody you'd love to have at your table? Who would that be?
Elon Musk. And the reason why, he is brilliant, a little polarizing, but this guy is not the guy that listens to podcasts 24/7. He gets a great night's sleep. He's smart enough to put smarter people around him and get out of their way. And he lives a pretty enjoyable life. If I look at those practices, I'm like, yeah, I have a million questions for him.
Well, we'll see what we can do to get you two at the table.
Yes.
All of you are always welcome at the table. So grateful for everybody who is making the time to be here. I'm really, really grateful and glad to be connected with you. If there's anything CJ can do for you, reach out. Her contact information is in the chat and in the comments. Until next month, invite a friend to come next month. Mark, you show up all the time. I'm so glad to see you again. All of you who make this world amazing, go forth and share and use what you used today. And we will see you again next time at the table. Cheers, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Ginger. Bye.
Thanks, CJ.